If you're a recruit or the parent of a recruit, you know that reaching out to college coaches is one of the most important steps in the process. But figuring out what to say to break the ice, that trips a lot of people up. And that's why I've partnered with Athlete Narrative. Athlete Narrative designed the Recruiter app to help athletes send clear, concise, and personalized emails to college coaches. Here's how it works. You start by filling out your radar page. Think of this as your digital resume. It's going to have your personal info, accolades, interests, and links to your game film. Then you use the Recruiter app to search for schools that match your interests. Once you find some schools, simply tap on a coach's name and the app will pull from your radar page to generate the perfect introductory email. All you have to do is personalize it with some quick info about why that specific school caught your attention. Then you hit send. The message goes straight from your inbox to theirs, and it's that simple. You do not need to pay thousands of dollars for an email service that might not even get results. For the same price as a month of Netflix, you can start sending emails that actually help you stand out. The recruiting process always rewards athletes who take initiative. Athlete Narrative helps you take that initiative faster. Download the app today using the link in this podcast description. Greetings, information superhighway. Welcome to another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. I am pumped to be with you today, not just because it's finally spring after like 17 fakeouts here in Buffalo, New York, not just because the Knicks won an impressive Game 3 and are showing signs of life in the Eastern Conference Finals after a great win in Indy on Sunday night, but also because we have a great podcast with a great guest for you here today. And I want to set the table for what you're about to be listening to. In the basketball world, we are entering the heart of AAU season. The women's side has already had 2 live eval events. The men's side just had their first big one. And now on both sides, people are going to be growing, playing regionally, competing, and gearing up with their teams for a heavy July with 2 live eval periods on each side. Now, for the less informed, a live eval period is when everybody gets to watch. D1 staffs can be out, as well as the D2 and D3 staffs that are out a lot anyway. This is your opportunity to be seen by everybody. And this is usually the time where there are tournaments in massive venues, and a lot of coaches go to get the most bang for their buck and watch the most athletes that they can over a 3 to 4 day period. So today, I thought it would be a good idea to keep with that theme of reverse engineering the recruiting process. If we were a college basketball coaching staff, what would we do to get ourselves ready for a live eval weekend? How would we decide who we're going to watch? What are we going to be watching? What guards stand out to us? What forwards stand out to us? What are the miscellaneous categories that help really bring someone to the forefront of our attention when we're recruiting? What's follow-up like? How do our conversations with the players go? How do our conversations with their circle goes? What are we trying to get out of those? And then when we get them to campus for a visit, how do we structure those visits and what are we looking for to really ensure that we want to offer this kid a roster spot or a scholarship, depending on the level? The more I sort of dove into trying to put this together, the more excited I was to try to get my hands on a guest that would be open to giving this level of education. And I am thrilled about the person we have, not only because I consider her to be one of the most reasonable voices in all of coaching, but also because her breadth of experience across a bunch of different coaching levels informs every detail that you're about to hear. My guest today is Coach Shelby Lyman. Coach Shelby is currently the head coach at Wisconsin River Falls. They are part of a current murderer's row at the Division III level, the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, better known as the WIAC. The WIAC had 5 teams in the D3 NCAA tournament this past season, and that's basically unheard of. Coach Shelby is continuing a build of River Falls, who's gotten better year over year since she's been there. Coach Shelby also played Division I basketball at Cornell and was an outstanding shooting guard for that program. After she finished there, she started coaching at the Division III level at St. John Fisher as an assistant coach, and I competed against her. That's where she and I first met. From there, she went back to her alma mater and was an assistant coach at the D1 level. Not only does she have D1 and D3 coaching experience, she also has AAU coaching experience. If you remember last season from my chat with Colleen Ames, you learned that at the D3 level, coaches can also coach club teams. Right now, Coach Shelby is working with the 16U AAU team. So not only are you going to hear what she's thinking about as she puts together a recruiting week for a live period, you're also going to hear the big things she's coaching her current players on as they prepare to go into these eval periods. Coach Shelby is way better than I am at being concise in her messaging. So this podcast is fat-free. It's like the lean, mean fighting machine of informative podcasts coming your way. So I figured in keeping with that spirit, we're going to keep the intro short too. Let's dive in. So, Coach, I actually want to start by calling attention to your background.
Yeah.
This is a Division III basketball facility.
Yeah, we have a room that's upstairs, overlooks the gym. It's called the RCU room. We'll have staff meetings in here, team stuff, team meals, but it is a really cool place to watch a basketball game, actually. So, nice little benefit that we have.
Yeah, it certainly looks at it, and I'm excited to talk to you. I appreciate the real reason you're here for, to help educate people, but I'm excited to talk to you about your conference. And one thing I'm constantly telling young people about is, like, when you get out into the Midwest, these D3 facilities are pretty wild. I've been in a number of D1 gyms that don't hold a candle to where you're sitting right now. Yeah,
we're very fortunate. The Falcon Center is hands down one of the best facilities I've had the opportunity to coach in, let alone work in. I've spent a lot of time in the Northeast and in some Division I facilities also. And honestly, this is probably, bar none, like the best one I've been in.
That's pretty wild. I really value your on and off court perspective on a lot of things. But you're going through a really unique experience as a coach that I kind of want to shed light on. It's not every day that a team, finishes in the middle of the pack of their conference and then looks up and everyone that finished ahead of them was in the NCAA tournament, right? You're in a unique situation, especially at the Division III level, where the WIAC has essentially become, the basketball murderer's row. Then we talk about your actual regular season. You beat 2 Final Four teams.
Yeah.
You have, I'm curious to just be in the mind of a head coach who is kind of still fighting that fight to escape the, quote, middle of the pack, but is doing it in the elite Division III conference. How do you balance those two things?
You have to get your players to kind of buy into it. We sell it during recruiting. You don't really understand what you're going to go through on a Wednesday and a Saturday until you go through it on a Wednesday and a Saturday. You can look at your schedule and you've got 2 top 10 teams that are on your schedule that you got to go on the road and play. It's the most difficult and the most rewarding / best thing I've done in my coaching career. This conference is incredible. You go into it every week. You got to take it one game at a time. It's 14-game conference season, but go in one game at a time with it. And, each team is so unique and so different that each game plan has to be just as unique and different. So it's a lot of time that goes into it. But our players, they get it. They understand it. The level that you have to come at it with. If you don't show up, it shows in a box score. And people look at that score and they're like, oof. But every night across the board, men's and women's side, we've had multiple Final Four teams. I think Platteville men played for a national championship last year. We had 2 that were in the Final Four this year. Like you said, 5 that made the tournament, which in the Division III landscape is pretty crazy because you've only got...
That's basically, you're the SEC of the Division III. It's wild.
Yeah. So we get 5 teams in and there's, I think, only 20 or 23 at-larges or something like that. So we take up a good chunk of it. But It is. It's a gauntlet every single night, and I think you also get to a point where you look at scores and you're like, oh yeah, like the number one team in the conference lost to the quote unquote like the 8 seed in the conference, and you're like, yeah, like I believe it.
Yeah, when you and I first crossed paths, you were an assistant at St. John Fisher, and I was an assistant at Union, and we would play really competitive games against one another, and I can think about what the recruiting pitch was like on my end, having the opportunity to play teams like you guys, and you guys were winning the Empire 8 and just competing in those games with you, but then also trying to sell our kids on, we haven't won the Liberty League and we still got to, try to build a team to win the Liberty League, and balancing those two things. I say that because you just alluded to, what that sell is like in your recruiting process. Obviously, your style of play, realistically reflects a bit of what you did as a player.
Yeah.
A lot of pace and space, a lot of 3-point shooting. So I know you're comfortable with that part of the sell, but are you comfortable kind of like walking us through, like, what is it like when you get like a really talented kid that you really want and they're sitting in your office? What is your messaging to them?
We talk a lot about that. If you're competing for a WIAC title, you're going to compete at the national level. And we are close. I think that we use that fact of, you can really go build something and do something. The last time River Falls was in the NCAA tournament, I think was 2015, 2016. So, it's been about 10 years. And we've been close. We've had some teams that, have pushed the button of the NCAA tournament in, the last 10 years. But you really try to just get them to commit to like buying into doing something that hasn't been done in 10 years, which, as a player, it's a little bit more of a challenging road, I guess, compared to going to a team that routinely is there. And it's hard to get there, and I know. You get there one year doesn't mean you're going to get there the next year. So you really just try to sell them on, doing something that hasn't been done in a while, and kind of you can hang your hat on, you were the one that did it. Your class was the one that did it.
I've always felt like there was a difference between a kid that wanted to be a part of something that was already built, or a kid that was like, dude, I have an opportunity to get into the ground floor of something. This could be like really special. Have you identified like some characteristics in some of those kids that you've recruited to River Falls that are like, oh, that kid has that thing that I'm really interested in? Like, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, a lot of them come from, I think, successful high school programs. So they kind of already know like what it takes. We have a player from Iowa who she won like 3 state titles in 4 years or something like that. So she kind of understands like the work that it's going to take. She's in the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week during the season when she's allowed to be with us. So that, I think, like people who naturally want to win or are accustomed to winning, they don't take losing streaks as well as somebody who maybe comes from a high school program that struggled or is in a really tough situation in a conference. And so, I think that's something that we look for is success at the high school level, just because, winning's hard. And you've got to be able to have players that know what it takes to win. It's not that all players don't want to win. It's just, you do have to do a little bit extra, especially when you're trying to get there. You have to build habits and culture that way.
On the subject of bringing in the right kind of kids and the right high school fit, I think about, our own backgrounds. You played at Cornell. I have to imagine the typical Cornell freshman looks a bit different and comes from maybe a different background than the typical River Falls freshman.
Yeah.
You have talked with me off air about, some of the differences and financially what is sort of creating challenges in higher ed. And I would love to pick your brain a little bit about it if you're comfortable. Like, I'm looking behind you at this facility.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you, knowing your experience.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling to believe that this is a state school.
Yeah.
Is that also part of your conversation? And is that like that level of access? Is that also driving some of these high school kids towards you?
Yeah, the facility doesn't hurt, right? Like my former boss and I joked that like if the facility wasn't what it is, like there's a good chance like we're not here, right? And that goes like across the board. Our offices, the weight room, locker room situation, like it's gorgeous. All the athletic complexes are right here. Like hockey's right next door to us in the same building. Indoor track is here. Football's across the parking lot. Like, so the facility, yeah. But I mean, who were able to go recruit, the type of athlete that were able to go recruit. Yeah, it's a little different than when I was at Cornell. You know, grades are very, very important. Our team has a cumulative GPA of a 3.7.
That's
so
awesome.
They're very, very, very good students. But on recruiting calls and when I'm talking to coaches, like my first question is no longer what's their GPA and what are their test scores. It matters, but you know, it's not the end all be all. And, you know, at Union, I'm sure you went through kind of the same talk with people. But the cost to go here, compared to some of the other schools in our area, the private schools, it's, you can't really beat it. What you're going to pay for, and get a great education in the process. We also recruit a lot of athletes that have plans to go to grad school. So like that plays a huge part, you know, the cost of a YX school for an in-state resident is going to be, you know, roughly $17,000-$18,000. And that's with no financial aid, no scholarships, no nothing. So actually we've had 10 players graduate in the last 2 years and 7 of them are currently in grad school.
Wow.
Yeah. So
the education prepares them, but also allows them to potentially afford a graduate education.
Yeah. And I think you're seeing that a lot with more and more people. Like they go to grad school for occupational therapy, PT, PA. Those are some of the common ones that we have on our roster. So that's, you know, a question that we ask in recruiting, like what's your major, right? Like, or what are you looking to do? And people tell us like, oh, I want to go be an occupational therapist. It's like, well, you got to go to grad school for occupational therapy, right? So we have a great exercise science program that prepares people. And, you know, we've got, I think, one who is applying to grad school now. She's going to graduate next year. And then one who's, you know, in grad school currently, occupational therapy. But that's definitely a factor. As like weird as it sounds, but people definitely talk about that when they're going through the recruiting process with us.
Well, I mean, even think about what this looked like when we were in school. I feel like the price of higher ed has literally doubled at the elite privates since we were in school. There is, you know, not to turn this into a financing higher education podcast, but I will admit that my stomach turned on itself when you told me that in-state tuition was $17,000 a year, because I know what Union's tuition is and Cornell's tuition is, and like even Canisius, which prides itself, Canisius is where I last was, prides itself on being an accessible private college, is double what you just said in-state. Yeah. Are there ever moments where you sort of look at that and you see the experience that these kids that are your players have access to and are like, wow, I spent a lot of money on college?
Oh, every single day. Every single day. I'm like, I would not trade my experience for anything. Like, I loved Cornell. I would go back and do it again in a heartbeat. Like, the people I met there, my coaching staff, like my teammates, like, I had a blast in my 4 years there. I wouldn't change any of it. But, yeah, I look at the cost and, it's like, you're just like, oh, man, like, I really spent, like, that money to go there. Like, I loved it. It afforded me so many great opportunities. But then, you know, you come to all the WAC schools, really. They all offer very unique experiences. We're all different in our own way. But, like, here at River Falls, like, it's a small-ish campus. You know, we have roughly 5,000 students. You know, so you're not going to run into the same people every day, but you're not going to feel overwhelmed with 20. I went to school with 20,000 students. Like, that was a lot. Yeah. Now that I'm looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of people. But,
big school.
But yeah, you're going to get the smaller class sizes, the like really tailored to you TA sessions or office hour sessions. And you really get to know your professors. You really get to know everybody that's in the athletic department. The affordability is, you know, I don't even like know how to put it into words. Like, I think it's great. I think it's great that state college or state tuition in our league has stayed what it is, just because it does give people the opportunity to go, you know, fulfill their dreams, right? Like, if you're going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for an undergrad degree, you're not going to be able to afford to go to grad school or med school or whatever it may be that you want to do, like, in your path in life. And so, the cost here and people get their financial aid packages, and it's not a sticker shock. You know, when I was at St. John Fisher, like, that was part of it. And we were on the more affordable side. of a private school at Fisher, and people would look at it and they're like, I can't go there. I can't afford it. So,
well, and there's another angle to what you're saying, that if I'm just talking about strategic recruiting and trying to field the most talented character team that also fits what I want to do basketball wise, I feel like you have an opportunity to compete financially with scholarship institutions right now with, the financial aid you have. Is that stuff that your league runs into?
Yeah. I think if you look at our league last year, every single one of us had at least one transfer that was, in the rotation, whether they started or not. We at River Falls have this next year, we're going to have 4 of them that were at a scholarship school. And we've graduated, a couple that were at a scholarship school in previous years. That made immediate impacts. But yeah, it's definitely something that allows us to go recruit someone who may have offers at a Division II school. And it's like, we can, with a financial aid package and academics and everything, like arguably will be more affordable for you. There's something at River Falls that like textbooks are included in your tuition, which I spent a lot of money on textbooks in college.
That's a huge hidden cost of college.
Yeah,
talking like $1,000 a year, if not more.
Right. Like I was a government major. I was buying 10 to 20 books a semester. Like it was insane. So like that's an included cost here. And like some schools may be like, oh yeah, we'll like pay for your books. And it's like, well, that's already included in your tuition that's here. So, it definitely allows us to be a little more aggressive in recruiting. There's no like they might be too good for us. It's like, no, like let's shoot them a text or call and like maybe we're interested. Like maybe they'll be interested. Maybe we have a major program that they're looking at, or maybe we're just close enough to home, whereas the other schools are looking at are too far from home. We'll go reach on a few, and if we don't, if they end up going somewhere else, like that's fine. But the transfer portal is what it is now. And so you build relationships with people along the way in recruiting. And I think you've kind of seen that in our league as well. Like players who go play somewhere and end up transferring back either to a school that had recruited them previously or that they know through the process. And so it definitely, I think our league has gotten better actually since the transfer portal opened, just because it allows people, a second chance, an option to go play somewhere else. And like I said, we at our school can put together some financial aid packages that, or even not, like that are affordable, schools affordable for people.
I appreciate you sharing in as much detail. I feel like a lot of people just got behind the scenes look at like what's it actually like to the strategy of recruiting at a school like yours. It's been so literally in each of the last 4 seasons, you guys have gotten the game better in conference. So I know how hard it is to build. It's been so cool to see you guys knocking on the door each year. And I know that's going to continue building for you. If you are ready, we can toss on our hypothetical lab coats and educate the masses about the recruiting process. Are you ready, Shelby Lyman?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I want to start, and you probably have some easy examples to cling to because we're coming off of a live weekend as we record this. If you've never heard of a kid before, let's bounce back and forth how a kid potentially gets on your radar. I'll start with an easy one, and then you can fill in the blanks from here.
Yeah.
I have seen a really good practice recently where reputable AAU coaches will kind of mass email college coaching staffs and just be like, hey, here's where my team's going to be this weekend. Here's my roster. And then they would just write 2 or 3 sentences about each kid. And if that's an AAU program that I've recruited from before, then I can make a note of, in my downtime, or if there's not a specific kid I'm watching, I'm going to make sure I see that team. That is like a really good one for me. What's a good one for you? If a kid wants to be noticed by you and you have no idea who they are, what's a good one for you?
We do like read and watch every email that comes through. It might take me a few days to get to it, but if it's a live period coming up like we just had, and they're going to be at the tournament that we're at, it's like, you got to go check them out, right? The AAU coach one, we take a lot of stock in that one just because I coach AAU basketball, and so I've gotten to know a lot of people throughout the years with it, and I've been in the area now for 5 or 6 years. The state tournament is a good starting place for us as well, maybe with some younger kids. We'll go to the Minnesota State tournament. If we have some downtime, we'll go I'll go look at a program that I've never heard of before. And it's like, let's go see who's at this court. But I mean, emailing us is always, I know people hate mass emails, but if you're able to tailor it and it's like 2, 3, 4 sentences of like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking to major in. I'm from here. Here's a highlight film. We'll watch it. And if there's any interest, like, we'll go check out.
I'm imagining that this was your experience as well. But I was basically trained. Like when my original mentors, when I was trying to break into coaching, basically told me, I don't care how tedious it is. You watch film from every email that you're sent. Was that consistent with your upbringing?
Yep. I think like when I was at Cornell, like my job was to handle every email that came in, whether they were able to play at that level or not. And you watch all of it, you make notes on all of it. It all goes into your recruiting database. And so everybody knows.
So this is, I think, really, really good hygiene for any parents, players, coaches that are listening. We are sticking to a schedule when we're on the road. We don't have the downtime that you think we do. So any way you can hit us in advance with film is going to help. Obviously, building relationships with AAU, I'm always going to favor the coaches that I know, especially if I already have a pipeline there. Yeah. And then in that downtime, just like you were talking about, Coach, in that downtime, then we're going to check out the unknown. Then we're going to see what's out there. But would you agree that your odds are elevated if you take the initiative? Like if you try to get on that schedule beforehand? Yeah,
absolutely. Like if you're talented enough, like we'll find you eventually, whether it's through word of mouth or what, like coaches talk on the recruiting trail. But yeah, like reaching out is by far like the best way to get even on an interest list.
So I want to divide the next category, right? Because we're not all looking for the exact same thing, right? I know the way your team plays, so it's probably going to matter to you that the wings you're recruiting can drill threes, right? Like,
yeah.
But without being overly specific, we're looking for guards. A kid that you see live that impresses you at the guard position does blank. What do you think?
You got to be a good screener. I think that's a very underrated thing that has, I don't want to say it's gone away, but if we're running a set or something, right, to get a post player a layup, like, and you don't set the good screen, then like play's dead.
Okay, so first criteria, small to big screens is something we're looking for.
Yeah, like we screen a lot in our offense, and so you've got to be a good screener. Post entry passes, we play a lot through our forwards. Our forwards are great passers, so we get them the ball, high post, short corner. You're like, can you make a post entry pass? And then like this is gonna sound incredibly boring, but like, do you just keep the game simple, right? Do you just, if 2 defenders go with a cutter, do you try to feed the ball into that cutter, or do you hit the open corner 3, right? So just, can you make the right play? And then like with guards, like obviously, can you handle it? Can you, 1 to 2 dribbles, create a shot, basic things like that, just overall skill. But it's really like, is your IQ, like what's your IQ? Can you set a good screen? Can you make the right play, the simple play, right? Like basketball is a simple game. Like I don't know. I say that a lot on the sidelines, like simple, right? Keep it simple. But yeah, those are, some of the things we'll look for in guards.
I want to ask you 2 follow-ups for guards specifically, because when I talk to parents, this is one that comes out a lot. I try to explain to them that like when it comes to the way they're being evaluated by college coaches, there's kind of a resume and a cover letter portion of it. And that like, if I see you do a sick dribble move and I see really consistent shooting form, that's cover letter material. But then I need to see your decision making and how you handle adversity. Is that sort of what you're alluding to with that smaller stuff in terms of screening, actions between the actions? Can you keep it simple? Is that resume fodder?
Yeah, like you're going to hit 3 threes or 4 threes and a half, like you're going to get our attention, right? But it's like, can you make the right read? Are you going to be able to handle, like turnovers are inevitable, right? Like I don't think there's ever been a basketball game where you haven't turned the ball over as a team, right? Like you're going to miss shots, like your reaction to those things, how you react to your teammates, like who make those mistakes, like that. Do you try to help your teammate who it's like, you try to force a pass, it's like, no, like swing it one more and then it'll be an easier entry pass, right? Like those little things that go in between different plays. But, I think scoring comes naturally a lot to people, and it's the smaller things that that will keep our attention.
I love the way you said that, because a lot of times when they get to the collegiate level, they can't score as easily, and it breaks them mentally because they don't have the other things down yet.
Yeah.
You also coach AAU. That's a D3 thing. If people are unfamiliar with that, D3 coaches can coach club in the offseason. I'm imagining that, especially because at the AAU level, everyone wants to be a guard, regardless of whether or not they should be. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the most common teaching point you're giving to guards, especially when they're facing more competitive teams in live play?
We get pressed a lot, right? Everyone presses in AAU, and it's ball fakes and don't hide. Like step to your catch, and then like I'll say it again, but like make simple passes. You don't need to try to thread the needle with things all the time. And then just don't over dribble, right? Like those are probably the three biggest things that I'm coaching a 16U team right now and see it a lot. Turnovers that are caused by like we don't ball fake with things, or we try to dribble through and it's like, no, if you just go here and then we're able to go. And then also like shoot it when you're open. Don't try to always like go get a layup. Again, like I know this stuff seems like incredibly simple, but like shoot it when you're open, right? Like that's the best shot we're going to get in a possession, and you not shooting it, we try to drive the lane and all of a sudden it's a jump ball. It's going the other way.
Oh my God. That honestly, AAU traffic, and I'm from downstate, AAU traffic is worse than Manhattan traffic, in my opinion. When I watch somebody drive 1-on-2, it is gut wrenching. And because like you'll see it over and over and over again, and you can kind of tell which AAU programs drill offense versus help defense and which ones don't by the game of tackle football that ensues on live weekends. Yes. So I appreciate you sharing that. On the subject of simplicity, switching to forwards, I am always surprised by how few young people realize that keeping it simple as a forward is the easiest way to get noticed. Drop step finish with each hand, showcasing that you can actually take physicality, seal well. And then the biggest one, which kills me that more forwards don't take this seriously, just being well conditioned. If you can beat somebody down the floor, seal, and finish with either hand, that's oftentimes a big attention getter at the collegiate level. What else do you look for when you see bigs?
Their footwork, right? Like it doesn't have to be super complex. It can be simple, like you said. But do they have good footwork? If someone's on their back, do they turn and face up? If they're getting fronted, do they know to seal, right? Like tell the guards to swing the ball and seal. And then we look at their passing ability as well, right? Do you try to go up through a double? If there's help middle, are you able to kick it to the weak side for a three? We've been very fortunate with our forwards the last couple of years. Like they can throw a skip pass on a dime to the opposite corner. To the point where I even still like this, she just is graduated, but for 4 years I watched her throw skip passes across, and every time I was just like, I don't know how that got there, but it did. So I think being able to pass, not even out of a double, but just out of traffic, that's something that we look for. And then offensive rebounding, right? Do you attack the glass? Do you use, if you're undersized height-wise, do you use your feet and your ability to be a little bit quicker to go to the offensive glass, or do you just hang around the free throw line and hope it bounces to you? And then you nailed it, like the ability to run the floor. It's not even like I don't need you to hit like a trail three. I need you to go sprint and draw 2 or 3 defenders. We talk a lot about that in our program. Like we'll watch film, or even like in practice, we'll stop practice and we'll point it out. Like you ran the floor, which allowed an open 3 to happen because you
sink the defense.
Yeah, like you drew 2 defenders, right? And you running caused the weak side to help, and so we were able to skip the ball across, and that leads to a 3. It's like that's an assist for you in my book.
In my opinion, the 2 most underrated qualities you can have as a big is consistently running the floor and having great vision opposite when you peak middle. So to your point about skip passes, my last year at Union, before the COVID shutdown year, so this would be 2019, 2020, yep. Our center, Ellie Vaughn, finished second on the team in assists, and all of them were I'm getting doubled. I take one bounce out of the kill zone and I skip opposite. Before we move on to the next thing, I know every coach has their own, we'll call it miscellaneous category. I had a hyper obsession with like the high fivers and the communicators. I was like, I want every single one of those kids. Is there something extracurricular that like always stands out to you when you see somebody play, regardless of position?
Yeah, I think it's the one who like their teammate will like hang their head, and it's the one who walks over and is like, no, like you're okay. Like the pass, like it sailed out of your hand, or like it doesn't matter that you airballed. It's like next play, next play, next play. So I think that's kind of ours because, basketball's so quick and you're never going to play a game where you're perfect. Like it's not going to happen. And so the player who understands that and recognizes that and is always telling their teammate, like, it's okay. Like we have to move on. You can't let it linger. Like that's kind of what I think will probably be like my miscellaneous one. The one who's always getting their teammate like quickly to move on, like from the mistake. Right.
It's funny, you talked earlier in the first chapter of this, if you will, about recruiting winners. I feel like what you just described is a winning habit. That's what winning teams do. They keep their teammates locked in. Mm-hmm. So, that's awesome. Okay, so you found some guards you liked. You found some forwards you liked. Now you're going to do your initial outreach. You're going to talk to their AAU coaches. You're going to talk to their families. Before you even talk to the kid, let's backtrack. What are the things you want to learn when you sort of do your quote unquote reference checks? Maybe you talk to a high school coach, talk to their program director, somebody. What do you want to learn about that kid?
I mean, are they a good person, right? Like, I think that's pretty standard for us across the board. We are still interested in their GPA and all of that stuff, their academic interest. If we don't have their major, it's kind of an uphill battle for us, right? Let's see, what else? Do they want to stay close to home, away from home? Are they open to pretty much anything? What are they looking like? Just how are they to coach? Do they take feedback well? How do they respond to mistakes? Do they practice hard? Do they get extra reps in the gym? I know practice is not all the AAU teams are able to practice 2, 3, 4 times a week, but when you have them in the gym for 2, 3 hours a week, like, do they go hard? Because you're going to
right. Are they engaged? What does it look like?
Yeah, because you're going to come to the college level, and like if you don't practice hard, like it's going to be a long 2 to 3 hours for you. We have a lot of people who like to spend time in the gym here, so it's like, do you actively want to get better by yourself? Because that's one of the challenges of Division III basketball is we're so limited to what we can do with them in the summer and out of season. It's like you have to be internally motivated to do it by yourself. So is that person going to go, any time of the day and go get up 300 shots or go work on ball handling stuff or take a teammate in there with them to go work on some stuff? So that's the biggest thing, I think, is are you going to be able to do it by yourself?
You mentioned several things in your response just now that if I were to categorize what you just said, category A would be, does the kid check my boxes in terms of being a kid that I want to coach? But then there's this other category of, are we the right fit for the kid? Yep. Would they respond to my type of coaching? Are they the right academic fit for us? And I think that it's really important to point out to our listeners that, like, at every level, these coaches are doing their homework early on about, what the most effective course of action would be, because they're not interested in wasting your or their time.
Yeah.
And, that kind of gives us an opportunity now to pivot to like a conversation with the kid. Obviously, a typical entry phone call to a kid is going to be the same across the board, because a typical phone call introducing yourself to anyone is going to be the same across the board.
Yeah.
But what I'd rather learn about, especially from someone that's had your experience at the D1 and D3 level, is, are there specific things you're looking for on that first call from that kid that would resonate with you or that would make you go, you know what? Yeah, I want to keep building a relationship with this kid. Like, what are you looking for?
Can you hold a conversation? Like, do you give us more than one-word answers? Sometimes, like, you're pulling teeth trying to get answers, right? It's like,
right.
Are you doing a spring sport? Yeah. Okay, great. Like, so can you hold a conversation? Do you ask questions? or are you just talking on the phone? I know at 16, 17 years old is hard. Admittedly, I was the worst student athlete to recruit. If it was an area code I didn't recognize, like I wasn't answering it. Like, I'm like, I don't want to talk to people on the phone.
You're from the Pacific Northwest. How many area codes did you even know?
Like 3, honestly. And they were all in the state of Washington and 1 from Oregon. So, if my dad wasn't in the car sometimes when I was getting these phone calls of like answering it for me, like there's a good chance that I probably just wouldn't have answered any of them. So like, I do understand that it is uncomfortable and it's awkward. And so like, we try to do our best to mitigate that and ask you questions and allow you to talk about yourself. But on the flip side, like, do you ask us questions? Can you hold a conversation? Are you, do you want to learn about our program, or are you just on this call because someone told you that you had to be? So those are some of the things. Yeah.
You're going to be airing right after a podcast with Joe Jones, head coach on the men's side with Boston University. And one of the things that he says in the interview is when he's on these initial calls with kids, he's open to letting the parents talk. And one of his strategies is to just let them go and see what they say. And what he said to me was sometimes, you learn whether or not this kid is going to be right for you just based on what the parents say, or if the parents are sort of too much and overdo it. I know, giving rules to the parents is oftentimes a hot button topic in recruiting, but like hearing that and knowing that you're coming right after that and we're talking about these calls, what are your thoughts on parental involvement?
I think it's needed to a certain extent. I mean, they're 16, 17 years old. Like when you're talking to them, like they don't know their financial situation fully.
Right.
Like they don't know, like, if they want to go far from school. Like there are certain things that like their parents, like that you do need help with, right? Like still, or like they may have no idea what they want to major in. They may tell you something because it's like what their brother did or something, and they actually have no idea. So I think parent involvement, like I think it's needed, it's necessary, but also you can't, it's a very fine line that they're going to have to toe, because in 6 months or 8 months, whenever your kid goes off to college, like they're my responsibility, right? Like I need to know if they're having a problem or succeeding, like from them. I need to know the goods and the bads, like from them. I'm not going to get an email and say like, why aren't you playing my kid? It's like, you can like, no, like please don't email me asking me that. But I do think there has to be some sort of parental involvement, at least at the start. And then, I think my communication with parents decreases as we get into the recruiting process a little bit further with the student athlete. Initially, or on like a first visit, parents will ask a lot of questions. But as we get into it, right, if it's my second or third call, or a kid comes back to visit for a second time, it's usually more, they're asking more questions, and I'm going to try to keep the conversation focused on them more so than parents.
Parents, that's a strategy. I've talked about this before, but like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If she's directing it towards the kids, let the kids go. Yeah. I'm not saying that's my sole interpretation of what you just said, Shelby. I'm just saying, make sure you take that note. Yeah. Okay. So now relationship continues, and it's rinse repeat a lot of the time. Just because you saw a kid live once doesn't mean that's going to be the only time you see him live. A lot of times you follow them up. We want to see if they can do these things consistently. But let's flash forward. Now we're going to kind of bring it to the home stretch, which is now they're visiting campus. There is one piece in my recruiting data, which you, by the way, participated in. So, 2 years too late. Thank you. Thank you for that. The piece of data that was most unanimously agreed on of any question I asked, I gave a survey question on a scale of 1 to 10. And the prompt was, when a visit is over, I ask my current players how the visit went with the recruit. And that got almost a 10 out of 10 average response. And I think that surprised a lot of parents, especially parents that I've talked to working with AAU programs, who just sort of assumed that, it was a sales pitch when they go on campus. Can you speak to some of the fit analysis that takes place when there's a campus visit happening?
Yeah, we schedule usually about 30 minutes with our players on a visit. Try to work it around their class schedules so we can have as many of them as we can to meet the student athlete that's on campus. And we usually have it without their parents. So like our coaching staff will take the parents, grab a seat outside or a cup of coffee or walk around or something. And yeah, I immediately ask players after the student athlete leaves campus, like, what'd you think? Do you think they'd fit in? I'm like, from a basketball standpoint, like, don't worry. Like, our players pretty much are like, you're going to bring in people that are going to help us, right? So, but the biggest thing is, like, do they fit in? Will they fit in the locker room with culture? Are they going to cause problems? Did they talk? Did they ask questions? Or did they let you all do the talking? And we have a very eclectic team. They're all over the place. They love this place. They love River Falls. They love to talk about River Falls. But I'm like, did you let them talk and answer questions? And right. I don't need to know entirely what you talked about, because that's part of the reason why we let them meet with the players.
Why I'm not there.
Right. I was in college. You were in college. There are things that happen that your coaching staff does not want to know. And like, I think, we take their feedback, more so than I think we take ours, right? Like, if our players are like, absolutely not, like, weird, like, not going to fit, going to cause problems, ask really like off-putting questions, I take that into account, and, maybe we don't recruit that player anymore.
I think that what you just shared is one of the most overlooked things by parents, that, like, oftentimes, especially when the culture is good, your veteran players want to protect and preserve that culture. And it's not like they walk into these 30-minute discussions, with a threat detector monitor on, waiting to find something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But if all you do for a half hour is put up glaring red flags, the kids that want to protect the culture are going to go into coach's office and be like, yo, coach, no.
Yeah.
And we listen. And, that doesn't mean you're not going to be a good fit anywhere, but it does mean you might not be a good fit for us. Right. And, that does happen. One specific example I can think of is I had a kid whose opinion I really value host a really talented guard. And she came in my office the next morning and was like, Coach, all she wanted to do was go to parties. And, like, we had practice the next morning and I told her we weren't doing it. And, like, she got mad at me. And I can't see this working well if that's how this was, on her visit. And that was enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you also have to remember that, like, we get them for, let's just say 4 hours, right? Like, during the season, a couple hours of practice, film, some workouts during the day. They're with their teammates for the remaining 12, 15 hours a day, right? Like, in the dorms, off campus at your apartments, dining halls, locker room, like, you are with your team more than you are with your coaching staff. And so if you don't get, kind of an approval or a check mark from players, right? Like, I can love you as much as I want, but I'm only going to spend a finite amount of time with you, like, during the day. So, I may think that they're going to be a good fit basketball wise, but then we have some players come in and they're like you said, like, all they wanted to do was know about the drinking and the party scene, right? And it's like, well, right. There is more to college than that, especially college basketball and college athletics.
My goal in bringing you on today was to basically go through all the minutia of what it actually looks like for the typical kid going through the process to typically get a roster spot offer or a scholarship offer. And I think that you just crushed that, because, where we can end is, and then if that all goes well, you get an offer. Most offers tend to happen in person on campus. Now, that's not always the way it happens, but there's a lot of coaches out there that want to feel this out. So the first thing I say is thank you for helping me through this journey. I feel like everything you said could be a 1 minute, like, PSA with that, like, NBC rainbow peacock in the background being like, the more you know. Like, every single thing you said was like that. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Thanks. I like what you do. It's fun to listen.
I appreciate it. Well, and you might not like this part, but I have one more thing for you before I let you go. I have been bothered repeatedly over the last 2 years by a member of your staff who consistently scares you and thinks of ways to startle you. And I need to know for my own comfort.
Yeah.
Has revenge been exacted on this young lady yet?
Okay. Yeah. So she graduated last year. She was a transfer student, ended up staying for her COVID year, got her master's. So she was graduated, and she was in my office.
This was a player that did this to you?
It was a player. So, like, she was in my office probably, like, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And, like, I get scared, like, pretty easily. Like, I don't do horror movies, like, none of that stuff, right? So it's probably gotten worse because she has then since passed it on to 2 other players. One of them hid underneath my desk as I'm coming in. This was a couple months ago. I'm coming in, have my, cup of coffee, minding my own business. Probably my fault because I didn't lock my door, but open my office, turn the lights on, and she's sitting underneath my desk, and she just goes, boo. And I fall into the wall. I am like, what are you doing here? Like, almost dropped my coffee, which honestly would have been the most tragic part of the whole thing. And she is laughing, and her teammate comes from around the corner. They got it from 2 angles. And I'm like, no one wanted to warn me? Like, nobody in this hallway wanted to warn me that they were sitting in there. So
I'm slightly bummed about your professional colleagues now, because I've texted you no fewer than a half dozen times being like, if you want me to help you get these people back, I will do it.
Yeah. So it started with a player. Her name was Macy Nielsen. Yeah. I can't get on her too much because she's one of the best, like, peer scorers I've ever coached. But Macy was the one that started it, and then Jaya and Emily are the ones that have continued it. And I'm very nervous for what's about to come for the next year. So
I have no idea how, but Macy, when you least expect it, whether it's like glitter in an envelope or like snakes coming out of a Pringles can, we're gonna think of something.
I'm gonna send her this. I'm gonna tell her.
That said, this is a perfect place to wrap. The extremely insightful and easily startled Shelby Lyman. Yeah. Thank you so much again for making the time. Appreciate you as always, and this was great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. For more information about my Nail the Recruiting Process project or the work that I do with individuals or teams, please visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you have ideas for podcast guests, questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, or you just want to reach out and say hi, please feel free to email me anytime at recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, the word gear, all one word, at gmail.com. Finally, follow me on social media at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram. That's my home base for all news, updates, and content. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.